in his annual State of the Union address. Very well, remember you can engage us on our socials at KTN News KE, at Dennis Assetto. On Twitter, our hashtag is Africa Speaks. We're also streaming live on standardmedia.co.ke and on our YouTube channel as well. These platforms are there for you to talk to us. But now let's go straight to Turkey, where rescuers are desperately searching for survivors in southern Turkey and northern Syria after two huge earthquakes on Monday. More than 9,000 people in southern Turkey and northern Syria are now known to have been killed, and there are warnings the death toll could continue to surge. Such efforts have continued for a second freezing cold night. Time is running out for rescuers to find survivors under the rubble. Some international aid is reaching Syria, but access is limited because of damaged roads.
The sheer scale of the historic earthquakes in Syria and Turkey is becoming ever more apparent, and the death toll continues to rise by thousands. To a point where now, over a day since the disaster struck, national rescue efforts are stretched thin in some areas and showing their limits. Both authorities and residents are digging with anything they can find, asking neighbors for hammers, rope, or using their bare hands. This is the city of Malatya, Turkey. This woman says her in-laws' grandchildren are in the rubble. Where is the state? Where have they been for 2 days? She wants to know. Her family says they haven't seen a single rescue worker. Turkey's President Tayyip Erdogan declared a state of emergency in 10 provinces on Tuesday for a period to last at least 3 months. Authorities say 13.5 million people are affected over 280 miles in Turkey. There are 12,000 search and rescue teams and 9,000 troops in that country, with more from other countries coming in. But roads are blocked and the logistics are tremendous.
Wait.
For example, at one airport, a rescue team from Taiwan was stuck for hours due to congestion. A rescue worker from Istanbul told us he's seen people complaining about the scarcity of rescue efforts. He says authorities are doing their best, and with at least 10 cities impacted, many rescue teams are needed. In parts of Syria, it's much the same. We found this man in the city of Jindris. He's not a rescue worker and he's not from the city either. But he says he came here with a group of 20 or 25 outsiders to help do whatever they can. There is no state here, he says. There's no equipment, no excavators. Everything's being done with their hands.
Sad images coming from Turkey. We hope that those who are stuck will be rescued soon. Now, here at home, Foreign and Diaspora Affairs Cabinet Secretary Alfred Mutua has called on Kenyans to donate foodstuffs, clothes and money to aid those affected by earthquake in Turkey and Syria that has so far killed nearly 9,000 people. Speaking during a joint media address with the Turkish ambassador to Kenya, CS Mutua said that a collection point will be announced where the mobilized resources will be channeled. Mutua said as part of showing solidarity with the two affected nations, Kenya will be sending them tea, coffee and cashew nuts.
As a country, we do feel that we cannot just sit and watch television and talk about what is happening in Turkey. We feel that as good Christians and good Muslims and good religious people, and also as good people of Kenya, we have a responsibility to lend a hand to our brothers and sisters in these nations. Therefore, I'm calling upon Kenyans to join hands in extending material support that would alleviate human suffering, such as foodstuffs, clothing, financial, medical staff, among others. We're looking at a way of getting tea, coffee, and even nuts, groundnuts, cashew nuts, macadamia to that country, plus other foodstuff and other items. And we welcome Kenyans of goodwill who would like to contribute to be able to support our brothers and sisters in Turkey and in Syria.
This shows the cordiality of the friendly Kenya and your solidarity with Turkey in times of disaster. What happened in Turkey is not only an intense earthquake, but also a very unusual disaster. as to its extent. It hit several cities and a big number of other settlements. Turkish government promptly mobilized every resources and means to intervene, as did the Turkish people.
Now, the run-up to a vote is usually a chance for small businesses to cash in on election paraphernalia. But business in Abuja, Nigeria has been slower than usual ahead of the February 25th vote, as candidates have hinged more campaigning on social media.
A loud whir fills the back of a print shop in Nigeria's capital, Abuja, as machines churn out grinning faces of political election frontrunners. The country's election advertising campaign season is in full throttle. The run-up to a vote is usually a chance for small businesses like Shimatex Prints to cash in on election paraphernalia, ranging from hats and flip-flops to tissue boxes and cooking oil labels. But business has been slower than usual ahead of the February 25th vote, as candidates have hinged more campaigning on social media. Shimatex Print CEO Joel Mso recalls busier periods around 2011, 2015 and 2019 polls.
Printing-wise, not much difference in our orders. Just a little, someone will come and order a few souvenirs, a few campaign materials, a few billboards. But the impact on the print industry is not as huge as it was in previous elections.
Social media has been a key campaigning tool ahead of a poll in which almost 40% of registered voters are 34 or younger, according to Electoral Commission data. And as Africa's most populous country, Nigeria is home to tens of millions of internet users, prompting candidates to compete for voters' eyeballs across social media platforms.
The only thing we have noticed is that there's a lot of hype on social media. Social media has played a lot of role in this. I think because of also the level of youth participation.
However, not everything has moved online. Parties still commission political regalia for rallies and other in-person campaign events. Print shop owner Opeyemi Osho Arelomo says there is no strange job for a printer.
The most craziest of order for a printer is a good job.
Nigerians will vote for a new leader to replace President Muhammadu Buhari amid growing insecurity and economic.
And nearly 1 million people have been forced to leave their homes in search of food and water in parts of Somalia and Kenya as a catastrophic hunger crisis continues to unfold. More than 22 million people are approaching or experiencing a complete lack of food in the Horn of Africa. The situation is projected to get worse in early 2023. Nomadic communities are particularly hard hit by food shortages and skyrocketing prices. While food and funds will address part of the problem, without a reliable mechanism of reaching nomadic families with consistent and holistic humanitarian assistance, the world's response to the hunger crisis will remain both inefficient and insufficient, warned the International Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies.
Africa is facing a food crisis that is bigger and more complex than it has ever seen before. That's according to diplomats and aid workers who say the situation has worsened in the past year. Conflict and climate change are the main culprits. Nadifa Abdi Isaac had to bring her malnourished daughters to a hospital in Mogadishu. She and her family set off on foot to the capital in hopes of escaping the drought that ravaged their town. The journey took 12 days. She says 3 of her children were anemic and needed blood transfusions. A nurse told her 42 other children had already been checked into the emergency unit that day from hunger. There were 57 the day before that. 500,000 children's lives are at risk from a looming famine in Somalia, according to the UN, more than anywhere else in the world. It also says 1 in 5 Africans, a record 278 million people, were already facing hunger in 2021, but warns the peak of the hunger crisis hasn't been seen yet. East Africa has missed 4 consecutive rainy seasons, the worst drought in decades. While on the other side of the continent, West Africa has been hit by flooding after historic rainfall. Heavy debt burdens following the COVID-19 pandemic continue to affect livelihoods, while rising prices and the war in Ukraine have made things worse. Regional Director of UNICEF, Rania Dagash.
The fundamental issue in Somalia and in the Horn at the moment is a climate-induced crisis, right? It's drought. But where the effects of the Ukraine crisis come in is that the food prices and fuel prices and others are hiked up to a point where we need more resources to secure what we would have secured before. We need a lot more.
Conflicts are also worsening across the continent. It's long been a driver of hunger, forcing people from their homes, livelihoods, and farms, while making it dangerous to deliver assistance. The number of displaced people in Africa has tripled over the past decade to a record 36 million in 2022, according to the UN. That represents almost half the displaced people in the world.
And more than 100 Somali police recruits have completed a 3-month intensive training organized by the African Union Transition Mission in Somalia, ATMIS, in Jubaland's port city of Kismayo. Speaking during the graduation ceremony, Jubaland President Ahmed Mohamed Islam Madobe said the new officers will be deployed in areas liberated from Al-Shabaab terrorists in Jubaland state to help maintain peace and security. The federal member states president was referring to the ongoing federal government of Somalia-led offensive in the south and central Somalia.
In the course of this training, the recruits underwent the basic training in policing. We trained them in gender, Somali penal code, arrest, stop and search, traffic, investigation, human rights, and all that is required of international policing.
Increasing the number and the visibility of the police is an important step in building the confidence of the local community.
In Zimbabwe, Police Commissioner Patson Nyabadza says they have launched an anti-drug abuse campaign in an effort to stop the sale and use of hard drugs like cocaine and others. He said this at a roadblock mounted by the police to stop drug abuse.
Commissioner Patson Nyabadza.
What is happening today?
Today we are launching a campaign against drug abuse and peddling in the province. We are saying to the members of the public, let's join hands in fighting against this menace. Remember, Bulawayo province is not spared in this menace, just like in other provinces. And you see, the most affected are the young children. And at schools, remember, we have had instances whereby the substances are laced in foodstuffs or beverages. And the young generation, at first, they will consume without knowing that the foodstuffs has been laced. So, the most common drugs in our provinces are the illicit brews, njengu, and the crystal meth, mutoriro. You would see most of the youth are being found wanting in this respect. And what are we saying now to the members of the public? We are urging the members of the public to come up bold and inform the police, disclosing the sources, the areas where the peddling is most rampant. And we as
the Tigray People's Liberation Front and the government of Ethiopia signed a permanent cessation of hostilities agreement after a 2-year conflict.
We do applaud the continued steady progress towards implementing the key elements of the cessation of hostilities agreement, as well as the positive role of the AU's Joint Monitoring, Verification and Compliance team. We are aware that Eritrean forces are beginning to withdraw from Ethiopia. We reiterate the call that emanated from the talks in South Africa for the withdrawal of all foreign forces. The departure of Eritrean and other forces is crucial to achieving lasting peace, securing full humanitarian access, and ensuring the territorial integrity of Ethiopia.
And yes, we continue to champion for peace in East Africa and all the other countries that still have trouble. We remain to be hopeful. Now, speaking in front of a divided Congress for the first time since he took office, President Joe Biden delivered his second State of the Union address Tuesday evening, touting low unemployment numbers and the end of pandemic emergency as he pleads for bipartisanship that's even more elusive under a Republican-controlled House of Representatives. VOA's White House Bureau Chief Patsy Widakuswara has this report.
Mr. Speaker, the President of the United States.
During his second State of the Union speech on Tuesday, his third address to a joint session of Congress since taking office, President Joe Biden stayed with his unity agenda.
Speaker, I don't want to ruin your reputation, but I look forward to working with you.
Biden touted increased American manufacturing and legislation that invests in renewable energy production, domestic semiconductor industry, and infrastructure to compete against China.
We used to be #1 in the world in infrastructure. We've sunk to 13th in the world. The United States of America, 13th in the world in infrastructure, modern infrastructure. But now we're coming back because we came together and passed the bipartisan infrastructure law.
Addressing high inflation, Biden argued the problem is global, caused by the pandemic and the war on Ukraine, and focused instead on low unemployment.
We've created, with the help of many people in this room, 12 million new jobs, more jobs created in 2 years than any president's created in 4 years.
He highlighted steps his administration took to erase federal student loan debt, increase the number of insured Americans, implement COVID relief programs, and lower prescription drug prices. But can he convince Americans things are looking up? Republicans are determined to stop him, with Sarah Huckabee Sanders, Arkansas governor and former White House press secretary under President Donald Trump, delivering the GOP response.
In the radical left's America, Washington taxes you and lights your hard-earned money on fire. But you get crushed with high gas prices, empty grocery shelves, and our children are taught to hate one another on account of their race, but not to love one another or our great country.
With Republicans controlling the House of Representatives following the November election, new House Speaker Kevin McCarthy has promised renewed scrutiny on the administration, including on the classified documents found in Biden's home, the billions of dollars of aid to Ukraine, and what they say is his weak response to a Chinese surveillance balloon, which the U.S. recently shot down. Despite low unemployment and gas prices down sharply from a record high in mid-2022, Biden's approval ratings remain at 40%. While his speech is unlikely to change that, it does signal that he is likely to run again in 2024.
He didn't say if he is or he isn't, but he made the case for why he should, right? Which is that he can see what needs to be done. He's had all of these successes so far. He's had all of this achievement, but there's still a lot more that he wants to get done.
As a gesture of solidarity to Ukraine, First Lady Jill Biden again invited the country's ambassador Oksana Markarova and parents of Tyree Nichols, the black man who was beaten by Tennessee police officers and died days later.
When police officers or police departments violate the public trust, they must be held accountable.
Following recent shootings in California, Biden again called on Congress to ban assault-style rifles. He urged Republicans to come up with immigration reform, debt reduction proposals, and vowed to protect reproductive rights.
Make no mistake about it. If Congress passes a national ban, I will veto it.
But bipartisan legislation is unlikely under a divided government. In a few months, Biden is set to clash with Republicans who are demanding spending cuts before agreeing to pass a debt ceiling hike to prevent the country from defaulting.
And Pope Francis criticizes laws criminalizing members of the LGBTQ community, saying persons with homosexual tendencies are children of God and God loves them.
Pope Francis has said that criminalizing homosexuality is a sin as he returned from a two-country trip in Africa. The pontiff was responding to a question from a reporter on his flight out of South Sudan on Sunday.
Questo non è giusto.
This is not right. People with homosexual tendencies are children of God.
Figli di Dio. Condannare una persona così.
Condemning a person like that is a sin.
Criminalizzare.
Criminalizing people of homosexual tendencies is an injustice.
È una ingiustizia.
66 UN member states continue to criminalize consensual same-sex relations, according to data from ILGA World, the International Lesbian, Gay, Bisexual, Trans and Intersex Association. Nearly half are in Africa. In Democratic Republic of Congo, the first leg on the Pope's trip, same-sex activity is not explicitly outlawed. However, LGBT+ rights activist Scaly Kepner, speaking on the day Francis arrived there, says there is still discrimination. The pontiff has also expressed his views against criminalization of homosexuality in a recent interview, which Kepner said had made him feel encouraged.
I think that these statements are a step forward for the future of Africa, the future of our country, and especially the future of religious discourse in the world.
On the flight, the Pope's comments were backed by the Archbishop of Canterbury, Justin Welby, and the moderator of the Church of Scotland, Ian Greenshields. The two Christian leaders had accompanied Francis to South Sudan in a first for a papal visit.
And that story takes us to a first commercial break right here on Africa Speaks. Don't go too far. We'll be back with much more, but I leave you with Destination Africa.
KTN News. Get the whole story.
Kwa miaka mingi tumekuwa tegemeo kwa nchi nzima kwa habari za kuaminika, matukio katika nyanja zote za maisha, siasa, usalama, mahakamani, michezo, yote tumekuletea wakati ufaao. Na ndio maana tunakuboresha hata zaidi, kwamba sasa KTN leo itakuwa ikikujia kwa saa nzima kila siku. Hapa ndipo taarifa za matukio kwa njia inayokufaa zaidi, maana sisi ndisi.